to present Austin Faith Dialogue, brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries. In the weeks ahead, you will see these and other programs by various denominations. Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs series at the crossroads of religion and life. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues in the area in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Join us now for this week's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue.
Wherever there is organized religion, there is a need for religious leaders. For any faith tradition to be carried on, there must be people willing to devote time and energy to passing on that faith. Welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue. Periodically on our show, we host religious leaders from the Austin area, and today we will be talking with some new clergy here in Austin. I'm your host, Father Mike Siss. And my guests today are Pedro Garcia, soon to be ordained a priest for the Catholic Diocese of Austin, and Father Peter Barlow, who is a new chaplain at Seton Medical Center, and Reverend Nancy Reeves, who has recently become associate pastor at University Presbyterian Church. Peter, you've recently arrived here in Austin. What are some of the things that you look forward to in your job at Seton? What are some of the goals in being hospital chaplain?
At Seton Medical Center, Mike, the pastoral care department is employed mainly to handle the critical issues of people's lives that often arise at the time of illness. And as well as that, it also seems to be a time that many people want to reconnect, both internally with their own faith experience, their experience of God, as well as possibly reconnecting in some sort of external manifestation by getting back into their faith community. And the pastoral care department supports that and facilitates that, helps people get reconnected with their local church communities, as well as the counseling aspect, again, for those critical issues that may come up during the illness.
So is hospital ministry something that's new to you?
No, Mike. I was director of hospital ministry for 4 hospitals for the Archdiocese of San Antonio, Texas. And I also do long-term counseling, and I did that there. And I'm also doing that 1 day a week here at the Counseling and Pastoral Care Center of Austin.
I see. So being new in town brings you to being a hospital chaplain. And Nancy, you've been in Austin all your life, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and tell us about your new ministry.
Well, I'm currently associate pastor at University Presbyterian Church. I was ordained in June after having completed my seminary training at Austin Presbyterian Seminary.
So you were raised in Austin?
That's correct.
You went to the seminary in Austin, and now you're a pastor in Austin.
That's right.
Will you be working with students at the University Presbyterian?
No. My responsibilities are mainly for adults. I coordinate all the adult programming classes on Sunday morning and weekday classes, special retreats. I also work in the area of evangelism in contacting visitors and helping them to feel welcome at the church. And then also I'm in charge of making all the hospital visits. Those folks in the congregation who are ill, I contact them and visit them in the hospital.
Oh, great. Well, welcome, Peter and Nancy, and Pedro, welcome to the show as well.
Thank you, Mike.
So you're about to be ordained, right?
Yes,
So has it been a long process in reaching the possibility of being a new clergy?
It's been 9 years of training, yes. Seminary. I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico for training undergraduate. I got my degree from the College of Santa Fe. And then I went to San Antonio to Assumption Seminary. And that's where I'm presently at.
And so when will you be ordained?
To the diaconate, it'll be September 22nd, and then to the priesthood, it'll be February 1st.
Very
Next
soon.
year, yes,
So soon the Church of Austin will have another priest in its ranks, having
correct.
studied for a long time. Yeah. Well, as you face the prospects of being new clergy, what are some of the expectations or unexpected surprises that might have come up in your experience so far? Nancy, you've been working as a minister for how long? Just a few weeks now since your ordination?
Well, I was ordained in June. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Have you had any surprises, or have your expectations been fulfilled?
Well, I would say that I had unrealistic expectations. I got out of seminary very idealistic about what I could do and thought I'd be real organized and could really minister to everyone and meet every need, and that's not possible. And after about the first 6 weeks, I realized that I couldn't do it all, and that was a real good point to come to recognize that and not to have such strong expectations of myself.
Yes. How about failures in ministry? I know that we have all kinds of idealistic expectations as to what we might accomplish. How do you deal with failures? Peter, have you ever had to struggle with that?
In my last job, Mike, I know that I really lacked the collegial support and what I call the ecumenical support that I now enjoy at Seton. We have several denominations represented there. We have Disciples of Christ, Presbyterian, Southern Baptist, and of course Catholic. And the department, which is several ordained people from those denominations, really support each other. Beyond that, the entire complement of employees at Seton really seem to work together to see to the whole patient's needs, the body, the mind, and the spirit. And so it's just a very congenial atmosphere that I didn't always experience in hospital ministry prior to my job at Seton.
How about your expectations?
Yes, it is very similar to that too. In ministry, I think it's, I can set very high goals for myself, but how realistic are these goals? One of the things, just to mention one, I'm from Mexico. I come from Mexico, and I've been in the States for the last 15 years, and it was of my interest to have people relate, you know, different cultures, different nationalities, and I thought that it was going to be, during my internship, was one of the things that I was doing at St. William's Parish in Round Rock. And I was thinking that it was going to be easy for me to work as a bridge, you know, to connect the peoples and to help them integrate in one faith. And it was not easy. It's not easy. It's a process that needs to be taken into a longer period of time, and the people will respond. But within 9 months that I was assigned at the parish, I thought that that was something that I could actually do, and then there was frustration because of that. It is a process that takes longer than that. So where I looked for the support was among those people that were ministering also with me, and we could talk about it, because it was really an unrealistic goal for myself. So.
Sure. Pedro talks about trying to bring together various groups and cultures. Do you have that kind of diversity at University Presbyterian, where you're trying to build community among diverse peoples?
I would say our different groups mainly are age-wise. We have from infants through 90-year-olds. It's a church that's getting ready to celebrate our 100th birthday. So we have a rich history, and we have people that have been there for years, but there is something to making all of that work, making sure that our 20-year-old students feel accepted by our 80-year-old members. And so we have several different programs to integrate the different ages and feel like we're doing a fair job at that.
So, Peter, now that you have become a minister here in Austin, how long have you been ordained?
6 years, Mike.
6 years. So this is your second career, huh?
Yes, before that, I was also in hospital work. I began actually years ago in pre-med and was a surgical orderly for full time, and then eventually found I had a little bit more talent for accounting, and so I became an associate administrator and comptroller of, first of all, a mental health center and then a hospital. And then I became acquainted with some Roman Catholic ministers who I liked what they did, and as I think as often a lot of us emulate people, various heroes or mentors in our lives, and so I began to feel like I wanted to do what they did, and so I began training at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., and then came out here when I was finished.
That's great. So Pedro, you've done your training in New Mexico and
That's
in San
correct.
Antonio. Peter did his training in Washington, D.C. Nancy, you did your training in Austin. People do training all over the country to become ministers in Austin. What does that training consist of in preparing for ministry in the 90s? Is it just going off to a seminary and studying? What kinds of, are there any sort of special training that have prepared you for ministry in the challenges of the 90s?
At Austin Seminary, I think one of the most important things we do is that everyone has to have an internship where they're actually working in a local congregation. And I think that's vitally important. It makes everything you're doing in class more real. You can talk theology and you talk principles, but it's not till you're out relating with people that you see how that really works and what it means. And so at Austin Seminary, you're required to do that. And I think for me, that really enhanced my education to be working in a church while I was going to school.
Where'd you do your internship?
I did it at University Presbyterian.
I see. And then they hired you on full
That's
time.
right. That's right.
Is that very common to have done your training in Austin and then to get a job in a church in Austin?
Pretty unusual to have that happen. I feel very fortunate that I was able to do that.
That is unusual. Pedro, you've done some internships, right?
That's correct, yes. My internship, as I mentioned just a while ago, I did it at St. William's Parish in Round Rock, and that was for a period of 9 months, in which I worked along with the pastor and the associate pastor at the parish, and all of the ministers that worked there at the parish. I have also done the CPE, that is the Clinical Pastoral Education, and I did this work at Brackenridge Hospital here in Austin. That was for a period of 10 weeks during the summer months. And I worked with Rex Lewis,
Right.
who is the director of the pastoral care department there at Brackenridge. Yes.
So CPE is something that helps you prepare for parish ministry even though it's done in a hospital.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it.
So is there a big difference between hospital ministry and parish ministry, Peter?
For me, there is, Mike. Some people, I believe, have a gift for the diversity of parish ministry. I know my preference for specialized ministry, both hospital chaplaincy and long-term therapy, is because so many people get left out of the parish system. They, as we use an expression, fall through the gaps of regular ministry through the parish structure. And very often in specialized ministry, whether that be teaching or jail ministry or hospital chaplaincy or pastoral counseling, this is an opportunity to, term that Pedro used, help provide a bridge for people who are not connected to mainline pastoral care. It's often a situation where, again, in critical illness or in some perhaps mental crisis, or even in the classroom, one teaches, I believe that's still considered a specialized ministry, or even in jail ministry, you meet people who are at critical points, or what we call crises in their lives. And this becomes an opportunity for the specialized minister to provide a bridge and a reconnection to the person's faith life, and then perhaps eventually even to a faith community.
I see that we have a group of people here, some of whom are married, not married. Nancy, I think you have some kids, right?
That's correct. I have 3 children.
Well, how do your kids react to having Mom be Reverend Mom?
Well, they think it's pretty special. They feel kind of important at the church because their mom is the pastor. But I will say it was an adjustment for them. I had been, before I had children, I taught school, and then when I had my children, I stayed home with them. And as they got a little bit older, I started doing some part-time work. So when I went to seminary, it was a big adjustment because that was full-time, and so they had to share me with more people. And so that's been the major adjustment, is knowing that people will call at a lot of different hours, or that when I'm at church that I'm at work and I can't take care of all of their needs, and their dad needs to do that at that time.
Sure. So availability is a big challenge, huh?
That's very true.
Yeah. What would you say, Pedro, has been one of the greatest surprises or unexpected events in taking on a life of ministry?
Well, the acceptance of the people. For instance, I had a hard time believing that I was being called to serve, you know, in the church. And then when I started to enter and to place myself into the hands of the people that were doing the training, you know, with me, then the acceptance and the help that they gave me to believe in my own call, you know, that was one of the greatest surprises when I enter. Is that kind of the sense of unworthiness, you know, who am I to be responding to something like this? And I think that is people that are more gifted than you know, that should be called to this. And then when they help me believe that it is the you know, the little ones, I think, you know, that the Lord calls to service, and that was, you know, it's a very humbling experience. Yes.
Sure. Peter, since you've been an ordained priest, have you had any unexpected surprises in ministry?
Unexpected surprises. I guess the changes in the church and my responsibility in helping bring those about. I think there's a real challenge for us to always be listening to one another, whether it's across interfaith lines or whether it's listening to the people and what their needs are without setting an agenda that we are going to decide what you need. When I first came into the church, I was not brought up Roman Catholic myself.
What was your religious tradition before?
Disciples of Christ.
Ah.
And when I changed to Catholicism in 1965, of course, Vatican II was just ending. And in fact, the first document on the liturgy was not yet published. I even served Mass a few times in Latin as an altar server. And the agenda, I believe, for priests was pretty well built into the seminary. And priests, I think, then had some very solid and concrete definitions about what it was going to be like to be a priest. Now there are not the same guidelines, and to find my own way as a priest, I find myself more and more having to attend to not just listening to God in my own sense of call and my own spirituality, but also listening to the people with whom I propose myself as minister. I remember we had a professor who used to say, as we were nearing the end of our training, as Pedro is, we're not sure if we're ready to impose you upon the people of God. And I think we all have that sense of humility that Pedro talked about, you know, who am I? And I think for me, that who am I sense and what am I about sense can often be answered by simply listening to what people are asking of me and trying to meet that need. And I now realize that coming to Seton, where the Daughters of Charity very much have a philosophy of they see a need, and if they have the ability to meet that need, then they are obligated to meet that need. And that that is very, very much like I always thought ministry could be. And so that is very reassuring that I don't really have to concern myself with some set agenda. I can simply take my guide from what people need. And if I have that ability, then I'm obligated to meet that need.
Sure. Well, I think we would all agree that being a minister in the 1990s is a challenging thing, and we face a lot of difficulties in trying to bring the message of our faith to our world. Does anybody have any observations on what might be your greatest fears in facing ministry? Nobody really has any great fears. You're just full of optimism, I guess.
We're naive.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So it looks like you're not really fearful, but you're hopeful, and you're looking forward to this, a life of ministry, huh? Are you happy about these choices that you've made to live a life of ministry?
I am, Mike. Yes, yes. Like I mentioned before, the experience of being in ministry itself, that's a challenge. That's a challenge, and I have, yes, my fears because of, I've been at the seminary all these years, but it's not the same as being out with the people in full-time ministry, and so my fear is that I'm going to have to, from the head, bring all this learning down to the heart and be with the people and let the people minister to me too, because it is a two-way street. And so one of my concerns is that I hope to be able to let that happen, to allow that to happen, so that people will minister to me as well as I minister to the people. And also, that there's other ministers that in this style of life, I don't walk alone. I don't walk alone. And I hope that the rest of the ministers also will feel that I am there too to walk, to walk with them. Yes.
I think one of the challenges of ministry is being able to allow people to minister to you while you are ministering to them. I think sometimes we put ourselves in this place that we're supposed to do the ministering, and we need to be open to letting them reach out to us.
Right.
That's wonderful. As we draw our show to a close today, I would wonder what your remarks might be to people who would be considering full-time work in their church, people who might be pondering the question of entering into ministry. What might be your reflections or words of advice that you might offer to someone of any religious tradition who's considering ministry? Peter?
Go ahead, Peter.
This is really a tag on to something I picked up in Pedro's talking about his own training. I think we all have to remember that our call, first of all, comes from God. And all we have to do is answer, and then God responds with the grace for us to carry that out. And if we keep that locus or that focus in God's choice, then we perhaps can maintain the humility, the connections, the support, and as Nancy mentioned, the kind of partnership equality that we are not up here ministering to someone down here, but it is a partnership, a walk with God. And God provides us with those in need, and we meet that need if we can.
Pedro, would you have any advice for somebody considering that path of preparation for ministry?
I would say just to be open and be willing to place oneself into the hands of those who will help in preparing for ministry. Yes.
What do you think, Nancy?
I agree with that. I think you need to be willing to develop your skills once you've heard that call or felt that you're moving in that direction, to be willing to do what it takes, be willing to go to seminary to check it out.
That's right.
So that's what you did at one point.
That's
you just
correct.
decided, I'm going to check it out and look at the seminary. And you liked what you found?
That's right. And I think the other thing we've talked about is not putting ourselves up here, to take away some of those unrealistic expectations of who we believe ministers are and realize we're all just people seeking to serve God.
Sure. That's wonderful.
I'd also like to add that there are many people today considering, as I did, ministry as a second career. I think it's important to remember that you're never too old or untrainable, or God has cast you off for anything just because perhaps you've felt like you've come to the end of one career and there's nothing else to do, because I think every church denomination is experiencing a tremendous amount of vocations from people who have made ministry their next choice.
Sure. Well, does anybody have any concluding remarks or observations as you begin your careers of ministry here in Austin before we conclude our program? It's all been said. That's fine. Well, I would really like to thank all of you for being here, and it's very impressive to see people who are so well prepared for ministry here. One of my reflections as I face my own ministry here in Austin is that it's not easy for us as a church, of any church or congregation, to proclaim our message in today's world, and it takes a lot of training and energy and time, and lots of failures and disappointments. But I'm really impressed by the kinds of training and talents that you all bring to this ministry. I'm also impressed by the ecumenical nature of the preparation that you bring, that your preparation has included lots of different schools and denominations, and not just one church, but your preparation has been ecumenical. That's very impressive. And so I would like to, as we draw the show to a close, I would like to thank our guests for being with us today, and I would like to thank our viewing audience for watching today. There are many challenges to religious ministry in the 1990s, but as we see in today's guests, there are signs of hope. Their education, their training, and their talents show us that there are signs for hope for the religious community of today and in the future. I would like to thank you for joining us on Austin Faith Dialogue.
Call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-7627.